Ladies and gentlemen, this is the PEG Access Advisory Committee meeting of March 11th. My name is Carlson Reed. I'm the chair of the committee, and I see that we now have a quorum, so we can begin our discussion. What I'd like to do first is just do a brief roll call for the members. Okay, Carlson Reed here. Ruth Lauer.
Here.
Vince Carlson. And you're on mute, Vince.
Here.
And Court Booth.
Here.
Great, thank you. All right, let's take we have a couple things going on, and I understand that court may not be available after 10 o'clock, so I want to make sure we at least get the minutes taken care of. Today we're going to be looking at the February 11th PAC minutes from the last meeting. Ruth, thank you very much for getting those set up. We'll talk about our next couple of meetings, and I have a couple ideas of what we can do for those meetings. We'll have a short update from MMN. This is from Phil. We'll look briefly at some possible revisions to our charge. We'll begin a short discussion about the enterprise budget for the PEG Fund, and then we'll have the liaison comments and public comments towards the end. Okay, looking at the minutes from February 11th, Ruth, thank you very much for sending them out. Do I have any corrections or edits to the minutes? Going once, twice. May I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Court. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's do a roll call vote. For those who are in favor of accepting the minutes as is, I vote aye. Ruth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Court?
Aye.
Vince?
Aye.
Okay, we have the minutes have been approved as presented. All right, that's done. Okay, next thing on the agenda I have down here are the next two meetings, April 8 and May 6. They will both be presented by Zoom, starting at 9:30 in the morning. The April meeting will talk a little bit more about the PEG budget based on whatever we have information. We've not seen the one for fiscal year 22 yet. It's not yet been presented. I'm hoping to see a draft of it before the April meeting, but we'll see what we can get. In the May meeting, we'll also be looking at the budget, and by that time we should have seen the posted version because the enterprise hearing is May 11th. But also something fun, something new, and I mentioned this to Ruth briefly, yes, she's smiling, something for April and May, the PAC Programming Awards. What I propose is that we look at the videos that have been posted over the last year. We'll pick some start time, whether it's March 13th, 2020, which is the beginning of COVID, or starting September 1 of this past year. And each of us send to me the names of 5 nominees. At least one of them has to be from the public, one from education, and one from government. But send in 5 nominees for programs that you think were interesting or useful or somehow special. At the April meeting, we would review those 5 nominees per person to see what the collection, see if there's any overlap, and talk about why we thought they were interesting, important, relevant, whatever significance they would have. And then at the May meeting, we would select the winners, the recommendations, the commendations. That's probably the better way of looking at it. So there's not just one winner, but in it, at least 3, one from public, one from education, one from government, perhaps more depending on what nominees we have, why you like these videos, what they did for the community, and as a way of recognizing all the hard work that the people who have made these videos have done for the past year's time. And then Phil, if it's okay with you, I'd like to have some or all the information put onto a plaque, inscribed and hung on the wall at the MMN studio, like you have some other type of awards. It would be a way of recognizing all the work. So that's my idea for the April and May meetings, just as a concept. Phil, what do you think about that idea?
Oh, it's wonderful. In fact, one of the comments I'm going to make about some other awards, but I think, a local recognition of what's been happening and what people are doing is fabulous.
Okay, I figure that's what our committee can do. Ruth, are you on board with this idea?
I am indeed, and I question what our sources are going to be to make sure we have a chance to look at all of the categories and not overlook some. You know, I haven't seen everything on all three channels, and I'm sure there are gems out there that
I
if they
think
have been recorded, they are possible for me to enjoy.
I think we'd have to rely on what's posted on YouTube because that's generally available to everybody.
Well, that's what I was thinking, just YouTube, but we might need to state that.
Yeah. Court, what do you think about this idea?
I think it's a good idea. I think we want to do recognitions. I'm really curious what Frank thinks because he's been on both ends of some of these recognitions in the past. How does this fit with the other ways we've been doing it? Is what I want to hear from Frank.
Okay, Mr. Breen, you're up. Unmute yourself first, please. I'm sorry, Frank.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know. I got a puck once, I think, for doing some work. So I don't know. Because there used to be a lot of hockey pucks around the, because one of the players one of the workers they used to drive the, the Zamboni machine. So he collected pucks and then they gave them out to. But that's all. I don't know of any other award systems we've had at the show there. Do you remember? I don't.
I think some of ours have been with ACM also, the Alliance for Community Media, where we've tagged on with them. I'll tell you a quick story about hockey pucks. In the waning days of Comcast, the two employees who were completely idled would spend their hours taking slap shots at the old high school, trying to destroy a piano that was in the corner of the studio, and I'm not kidding. That's how awful things were at the end of the Comcast days.
Okay, all right. So, Vince, are you on board with this idea of having some type of a local recognition for the local program?
Yeah, it's a great idea. I do think we should have some kind of a takeaway for the winners, either the producer or if it's the individual, the winners. Maybe we can have a Packy something or other, right?
We'll think about that. Yeah, we'll think about that. The other part that I was going to do is to do a little write-up for the Concord Journal about this particular event and why we had it and where you can watch videos, that sort of thing. Okay, got a thumbs up from Court on that. Okay, all right. I don't want to spend any more time on this. What I'd like you to do, unless I hear strong opposition, I'm arbitrarily picking the date of March 13, 2020. That was the beginning of the COVID announcement as the starting point.
Yeah, I can show you my award I got. Is this?
What does it say?
Okay.
What does it say? Local Event Coverage Award. Okay, all right, got it. Got it. Well, keep that handy. I may talk to you about that. Okay, March 13, 2020 is the start of the COVID broadcasting. From there until, let's do it until the day before our next meeting. So let's do it up until, see, April 8 is our next meeting. Let's do it up until April 7, 2021. So a little over a year's time. Okay, so that's the time frame. Find five nominees, no more than 5. You can do fewer than that, but no more than 5. And then send me your list. And then I'll compile it and we'll talk about it in April to see what we would do about this local recognition. Okay, I'll make that more of an agenda thing than just what we're going to be doing on. All right, anything else on that before I move on? All right, you have your marching orders, folks. All right, next agenda item. Let's go to the MMN update with Phil. Phil, let's go ahead and do it. Start with you.
Sure. So in fact, actually, I think just staying on the awards topic here, we have submitted for an Emmy Award, the You Raise Me Up music video that was done with the high school. So that has that's something that we're all very proud of, and again, as I say, that's actually up for and been submitted to the Emmys. So we'll see how that goes. We also have submitted 2 videos to the Alliance of Community Media. for town meeting and for the high school graduation. Again, being, you know, extraordinary in the fact that this is all taking place in the time of the pandemic. So just wanted to kind of mention that. And also wanted to go back some old business here. Carol, I know you had asked earlier, you know, about TV Guide, you know, why when you're on the TV, you know, when you hit the guide there, you cannot get what the actual programming is. We're looking into it. It's a live TV Guide channel is what it's called. But in terms of actually, it's more complex than us just posting the material locally. It has to get to the cable provider so it gets on there, and that we're looking into it. It's not as easy as we had hoped it would be. You know, again, as when we program programs here, it, you know, goes up onto our website much easier. So that is something we're still working on. In fact, I see Mark Pauly has joined us. I don't know if Mark has anything more he'd like to add on that, but that you know is still a work in progress. Number of meetings since the last, in terms of public meetings, we're up to 47. So, you know, there's been a lot of, again, community committee meetings in both Concord and Carlisle. So, you know, I think that's kind of what the average is. There's quite a number of these meetings that, you know, take place, you know, all kinds of things. So that's, you know, again, keeping us busy, but that doesn't prevent us from doing other productions as well. Concord Days, again, there's been a new one, and that is a regular program that we have been filming on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. So that's been moving along. We've had a couple other special programs. We did a collaborative with the Friends of Minuteman National Historical Park. They had a their winter talk program or lecture, and we actually collaborated with them, carried it live on Zoom, and also aired on the Education Channel as well. Again, working with the Robbins House, the Concord Players, winter sports at Concord Carlisle High School, several basketball games were covered. League of Women Voters of Concord Carlisle and candidates forums. So these are, you know, programs that continue to come into us with independent producers in the community. We are, of course, are going to be covering the live Concord Carlisle football games here at the stadium starting this Friday. There's 6 total, but 3 home games. So we will be covering those home games. We're also working with the celebrations committee here in town for Patriots Day. Of course, Patriots Day plans have changed dramatically, but what we're going to be doing is working with some previous footage that we have of Patriots Day parades and working with units that have been invited in the past to submit a video. We're going to be cutting those in. And again, still in the works would be the actual Patriots Day, which is Monday, the 19th of April. I believe they're still going to be doing dawn salute. So we will try to actually do that live. There's some technical questions that we have to kind of surmount, but I think that will work for us. And there's other Patriots Day related projects that are taking place with other areas, you know, like the National Park, the Concord Museum, that we're also working in support with. So that's been our work for the past month. Again, you know, it's COVID and everything. We're still very busy, and of course, always responsive to any requests that do come in, any questions that are coming up. And a couple other things, and maybe this is something for the PAC to think about. In fact, I'm glad Tammy's here, because when you know, Tammy and Richard approached us, the idea was to do a podcast. And for the moment, what we're doing now works best. But you know, the question is a podcast, is that something that is doable? And you know, taking the audio from a conversation is relatively easy, but it's all the other stuff on the backside, you know, making it available, that there's a cost to it to do that, to, you know, where the actual audio would be, live, and then making it available to players such as Spotify or iTunes or something like that. But I think maybe, maybe that's something that the PAC, if they have some time, if they would like to look into that a little bit, or if they feel that it's a pertinent thing that we should be doing. I think in some ways, cable production is what we do, but, reaching audiences through different means may be something to think about. And I'd like to add with that, there is also, with smart TVs becoming more of a thing, there are apps that are available for TVs. I mention this because by coincidence, I happen to find Fitchburg Public Access actually has an app. So you can actually watch on your smart TV, things that are happening in Fitchburg. I did reach out to them, just curious to learn a little bit more about what they're doing and how that all worked. And, like a lot of things, the infrastructure is there where the signal would come from, but there is a cost to set it up. So again, I don't know if that's something that's worthwhile, but when I was discussing or talking via email with their executive director out there, their point of view is that to look on a laptop to watch something is okay, but some people find it uncomfortable. But again, with smart TVs, you could sit back in more relaxed type of the thing and then access your programming that way. So again, it's something else that's out there. Don't know if it's worthwhile, but again, something maybe to discuss for the future. And that's it for the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. Interesting ideas. I'm going to get some questions for Phil, first from the board and then from members of the public. Do any members of the board have any questions for Phil about MMN Update this or anything else? Vince, you go first. Go ahead, Vince.
Phil, on Concord Players, what kind of work are you doing for them? Do they have something going with performances that they're doing or planning to do?
Yeah, so we've been doing work with the Concord Players. We're actually doing a project with them this weekend, and then they've also asked about a future project, at least coming up in May. I'm not sure about April. It varies. The reason is for us to go over to work with the Concord Players on a project. Of course, it has to be made available online. They're using some of their programming as fundraisers. So that brings a little question of like, we shouldn't be doing that in that sense. However, to work with the community in that capacity, Minuteman Media does hire out its services, and they've hired us to do a couple of these projects. So for example, the one that's tomorrow is, there is a rate that is charged per person for the amount of time. So what they then do is they make their program available behind a paywall. So it's not public access. That's the big difference. So if you wanted to see that project, you have to go to their website or whatever, and then you have to pay to get into that. So that's why they're hiring us in this capacity, as opposed to us doing it as strictly as a public access project, because anything we do has to be made available. Now, we've done a few projects with them, which again is for the public. There's no charge, and we've made that available through the Minuteman Media website.
Well, I think it's certainly a worthwhile process, probably in both contexts, that is behind a paywall or not behind a paywall. I'm thinking of the Concord band, which I kind of a little bit more interested in the Concord Players, but they, do, I think, maybe 2 free concerts a year. And then they also have some for their membership.
Right. They haven't reached out to us. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if they've been doing as much. Part of, again, the COVID, when we've gone over to 51 Walden. In fact, we work on a project with Frank there, and again, they were very limiting as to the number of people that could be in the building. They were following the code, the standards. Whereas I think with music, it's a little bit different because you have a larger ensemble. But again, they haven't reached out to us.
But Anyway, it is an interesting notion maybe to have some kind of hybrid of free performances and paywall performances. You know, the arts should certainly be encouraged. And I'm sure they're suffering a revenue loss. And, you know, I don't know how prepared they are to get going again, but it looks like it will still be a while.
Good point, Vince. Other questions from the committee? Ruth, go ahead, Ruth.
Everything that you've mentioned, Phil, is interesting. I want to make sure that nothing that you've mentioned would limit the activities of staff or volunteers on accomplishing our main mission. You know, if I put your head back into the deep dark, remember beta and VHS? Yeah, we don't want to be the people to be investing in beta if VHS is going to take the scene. And, you know, I remember in the days of when I was on school committee, unfortunately, schools invested in laser discs. You know, they were this big around. That technology did not last. And I would hate to see us making huge investments. On the other hand, I think making some investments is worthwhile as we chase what's going to be valuable for most of our community. I just hesitate to make investments of staff time and energy and equipment that might limit us in our major goals.
Sure. Actually, I know exactly what you're talking about. DVDs up until a few years ago were all the rage. And in fact, Mr. Johnson was looking for something not that long ago, and we did have it on DVD. So we were able to pull it up. And actually, this goes back to, I think, a question Mr. Johnson had a few weeks back was about archiving. Actually, Ruth, maybe it was you. I'm sorry, but there was a question about archiving, and we do have a meeting with the town archivist. You know, we're starting that conversation as well. What will be the best way to, you know, store the productions that we have? You know, because now everything is in this on-demand world, and you know, in this cloud, and you know, where do we go from here, and how does that work? So yeah, that's a conversation that we're having. But I understand exactly what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Court, did you have any questions about this? No? Okay. All right, let's open up to the audience. Audience questions for Phil about MMN. Any questions about that? Oh, Court, did you come? Oh, he just signaled off that he needs to go off for a few moments. All right, audience questions for Phil about MMN. David Allen, go ahead, David.
Just a footnote on the discussion, just precedent about archiving. As discussed, I think, in the last meeting, the cloud really is a place where this works now. And thinking back to Ruth's point and choosing technology that's going to last, quite clearly, cloud is the place where things are going. It would mean conversion from DVDs. It would mean a lot of things, but I personally strongly commend casting your longer term plans out in that direction. Once we've got cloud storage for the archive, that's essentially universally available, we've got a remarkable resource.
Thank you, David. Any other questions from the audience about for Phil on MMN status? Matt, go ahead, please, Matt.
Yeah, it's not so much a question, but just commending MMN on the work that they're doing. I just happen to have direct secondhand knowledge of a project that they did recently on an arts project that commemorating COVID, and they just did a great job in terms of capturing the original footage and then working to edit the footage and create a nice final result. So I just thought that both the filming and editing is very well done.
Thank you. Appreciate the compliment.
That was well deserved, man. I watched the video. It was very, very nicely done.
Yeah,
Any
and
other?
I'd actually like to just call out Mark Pauly on that, because Mark was the person who was working on that project, and you know, he was really excited about it. And so thank you very much, and I will make sure that he gets the word.
Okay, sounds great. Other comments from the audience about MMN? Tammy, go ahead, Tammy.
Hi there. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the producer. I'm one of the producers of Concord Days, but I'm actually just going to respond to Phil's comments, just as a general member of the public. Especially when Phil was talking about the possibility of doing an app. I worked in technology. I understand that there is a lot of work and time and effort involved in creating one, and the idea of like, how do you want to actually, you know, have your viewing experience? I think that YouTube is definitely serving that purpose. So if that is one of your main concerns, I just wanted to put that piece out there, that you sort of already have that need covered. So if there are other reasons to do the app, absolutely go forward. But definitely as a member of the audience, and I would say that that's great. Also, I just wanted to throw this out there about podcasting, because I'm also a theater person. I'm a playwright. That sometimes it might be easy to, and I've seen a lot of theater people do this, to create a podcast version of theater as well. So you just have the audio only. And if you're thinking about having them do something that's available to the public versus something that's that somebody would pay for, that doing a filmed version might be a separate enough piece of content from just like a podcast version. So I just wanted to put that out there for everybody. I'm not sure what your experiences are, but I think that might be an interesting avenue to explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate that. All right, last call for comments. Ruth,
Well,
go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. I need Tammy's address.
My apologies.
I have
Tammy?
our other visitors, but not Tammy.
Tammy?
Hello. So my mailing address and my residential, or my email?
Residential.
Okay. 113 Mara Vista, MARIVISTA Avenue in Waltham, Massachusetts.
Waltham.
Great. Thank you very much.
That's
All
all
right.
right. Thank you.
Okay, what I'd like to do now is get on to the rest of our agenda. Appreciate those comments and those observations. The next thing we're going to be looking at is possible revisions to the charge for our committee. And for this purpose, let me see if I can do this right. I'm going to pull up, I've sent you 3 documents, and I'll pull up on the screen a moment here very briefly. These are 3 options that I've picked out. There are other options that we can do. One of them is the version of the Cable Advisory Committee charge that was the previous iteration of this group. Now I have it down here labeled as 12/15/17. That's just the date that I photocopied it, downloaded it from the town's webpage. The Cable Advisory Committee was in existence till about 2015, I think. Then there was a 3-year gap before this committee was started in 2018. So that's the version of what the committee was like. The second version I have is the current committee charge. I have made 2 edits to it, and they are the same edit, just in 2 different places. It's reducing the size of the committee from 7 voting members to 5 voting members. This, my rationale for that is that we have trouble getting quorum. It would be easier to have the committee meetings if we had 3 people instead of at least 3 rather than 4. So reducing the committee size from 7 members down to 5 members. That's my suggestion. There may be some other suggestions, but it's based on what we have right now. And then the third option is something that Vince has brought up earlier. I call it the Lexington version, which is an expanded version of what this type of committee could do, not just dealing with cable TV related matters, but expanded out into other broadband and telecommunication issues, which the town of Lexington currently has. The document I sent was fairly lengthy. It is like 55 pages, and it's a manual of best practices on how to do everything telecommunications wise in Lexington. So this is not going to be something we're going to vote on today. I'm going to be opening it up for discussion about what this committee should be doing going forward, starting the next year. And I'm happy to share stuff on the screen if you want, but I'd like to see where the committee wants to go with this and what you want to do. My personal feeling is that if we did nothing to this committee charge, we should reduce it from 7 members down to 5, so that it's easier to make quorum, so that we can have the meetings more likely to occur. Okay, so that's my personal view, but I wanted to see how the committee members felt. And then, so if there's any committee member who'd like to start on this, I'd appreciate hearing what you think. Ruth, you're up first. Go ahead.
Thanks. The Cable Advisory Committee from the old days was a very, very short-term committee. It was dealing with the renegotiation and very little else. In fact, they sort of petered out when there was nothing further for them to pay attention to. It's very short term. However, before that,
I know you
okay.
just disappeared. I'm showing the document
Is
here.
it okay?
This is the
If I
document.
just keep blithering on?
Please
Okay.
keep blithering on, or whatever you wish to call it.
Okay.
This is what it's
Before this committee, there were indeed other cable advisory committees of much longer duration and much broader mission.
Mhm.
So this one, I think, gives us a good view of, paying attention to Comcast and the terms of the cable agreement and negotiating, responding to complaints. But I thought that, and I'll put that aside for now. And I thought that the current charge had a mission that did not solely focus on renegotiating. And as a matter of fact, we've been counseled to keep our noses out of things that we apparently were not entitled to do. This one, the current one, I think is great. I think your notion of reducing the committee size, thereby making it more likely to get a quorum is fine. That's cool. But I don't know if we can maintain the requirement of experience in communication media and that one designee from the school committee. Maybe sometimes they could be the same person, who knows? But if we then have 3 at large with diverse backgrounds and another member from Carlisle, does that mean make it 6? Say, for instance, if that member were Nancy Pierce and not Tim Holt, would she be able to vote? She's here, she participates, she responds. She doesn't have a vote, but does she affect our quorum ex officio?
The ex officio members do not affect the quorum. The fact that Tim Goddard is not here is not a significant impediment for us to
Tim Goddard,
cover
sorry.
meetings. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, the Lexington missive I thought was very interesting. It came out of the Lexington long-range plan vision. That's great. I thought that communication was much broader than, as it was defined, much broader than our mission. And that's great, because as a town and school, we need to know what our constituency is thinking, aware of, and needs. And our constituency needs to know from us what we see as the issues and what we are dealing with. So that's great, but I think it is broader than this little, now perhaps 5-member committee. I think it's something that the Matt Johnsons and the Terry Ackermans in today's world would be looking at, with perhaps charging a new committee with very broad-based goals and missions, because as it's noted in the document from Lexington, it involves working with departments, department heads. And you know very well that we can't do that. And that just said that, let me fine tune, that would end it. I think it's very interesting. It would have a lot of meat on the bones. It would be really something good to do, but separate from our committee.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Vince, I'm going to turn to you next. And then after, let's see, now Cord isn't here. Vince, after you talk, I'd like to hear from Matt and if possible from Terry. But let's go with Vince Carlson first. Vince, what do you think of these three different options, or some fourth option that you may prefer?
Well, I did prepare a little write-up, which we don't need to look at or discuss today. As a matter of fact, I just sent you a copy, Carlin, that kind of summarizes the Lexington outlook here, and how it connected both with their long-range plan and how it connected with an issue that they raised actually in the preamble of this report that they did. And their comment was on the loss of news reporting capability at the local level. And of course, they were referring specifically to the way that, the Lexington, wicked local operation was behaving, which is, very similar to the way that it's behaving in Concord currently. And so one of the priorities they set out in their, I think it was 7 points they had in terms of recommendations, had to do with how to disseminate news. And it was on, several fronts. It wasn't just government news, but government took a prominent place. That is, how is reporting done on committees? How does everybody get to know what's happening in the committee? What's happening with the possible special interests they have, because many people, have one or two special interests, and they want to see how that's faring, how they might make that proceed. So it seems that if there is some way to engage with that, either through some role of the PEG Access Advisory Committee or some future incarnation of the PEG Access Advisory Committee, or as Ruth said, even a separate committee that has a broader range, that certainly seems to be a very high priority. I also looked at a number of other studies, some work that have been done by the FCC themselves, who's done a very extensive survey for several interest groups. And basically all of these studies point to the same thing. They talk about the loss of hyperlocal, quote unquote, reporting. The kinds of things that some private firms are still trying to do, like Patch, which is owned by AOL, but recently changed hands. The neighbor, what is the neighbor one, the local neighbor one, where you try to get a group of people within an area of a few blocks?
Sure.
CNN.
Yeah. And basically they're looking again at just the loss of getting the word out to all the members of the community in a timely fashion. I think the example, that's very good in an abutting town is the Carlisle mosquito, if people are familiar with that.
Yes, I think agree. It is really good. I agree with that.
It's a weekly publication. It's mailed out free to everybody in the town. The revenue is from a combination of advertising and contributions. For instance, this last year, since the advertising was down, they got a contribution from some benefactor, I think, of $50,000.
Okay, so bring that back winding up to our charge, how does that relate to what we should be doing as part of our charge? Are you
Well-
saying we should become a local news station? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, that seems to be the viewpoint of every single study that's looked into the issues of what PEG in some form should be doing, or should be at least participating on a secondary basis, offering some kind of a venue for doing it. A lot of this is social media. A lot of these things take place over the internet.
Got it. Okay. Vince, I'm going to hold you right there. I'd like to turn to Matt because our committee is a creature of the select board. And our job is to advise the select board on various matters. So Matt, can you give us your personal perspectives? And if you can share a select board perspective, I'd appreciate that too. I know Terry Ackerman is here as well, and I don't think we're going to violate open meeting law by having the two of you talk, but I'm not sure how you want to do it. But Matt, I'd like to give you the first crack, and then Terry, see what do you want us to do? What should be our charge? Go ahead, Matt.
So I think obviously can't speak for the select board. We don't yet have a select board position on this. And in fact, I think what we're looking for is to get the PEG Access Advisory Committee's position on this as an input in order to make such a deliberation happen. But I think that there are a couple of things that are driving the need for an update of the charge. One, I think, is the structural change that has happened as MMN has come to be. It used to be, I think, with PEG Access, there were two halves of the management of contracts that needed to happen. One was, of course, the relationship with Comcast. The other was with an entity, a separate entity, that was providing the services. Now that MMN is an organ of the town, I think that side of it has, the nature of that relationship has changed, and I don't see as much responsibility, required for an independent committee. That said, I think the second thing is what you've just been talking about, that we have seen a transformation over the last few years in the nature of local communications, the sort of decline of the paper of record, if you will, the increasing reliance on electronic communications, such as the town website. And as the town has many important initiatives to have, a consistent communications and comprehensive communications approach is important. We do have a town communications director, so very much as with MMN itself, there is a direct management responsibility for communications, but also it's good to know that for virtually any activity that we have in the town, we do have citizen oversight. And so I think that there is an opportunity to have a different sort of organization that would, I think, look at the public access television as one of the channels that for communication, but really is looking more comprehensively at how the town communicates, and very much in that mode that Lexington is talking about. Maybe the details of how the day-to-day management would occur would change, but I do see a need that's maybe not currently being met in terms of the overall structure of the town committees in this area.
Thank you very much, Matt. Terry, how about you? Do you have a view on this? I'd love to hear what you think. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, well, I'll be really brief. Matt is the liaison, and I was just observing. But I think that you're really onto something here. I really am intrigued about the possibility of an expansion of your charge and into doing more local news to fill that gap that we have right now. And I'd love to see this committee be on the select board agenda with a proposal so that we can discuss it.
Okay. All right.
If I could just jump back now,
Please do.
I mean, right now, you know, the best we've got is kind of the town manager's report. But we don't have any kind of digest of like, hey, here are the highlights from this week. There was this, you know, critical moment on the school committee where this, you know, big issue happened, and give a little 2-minute snippet or one, you know, 30-second snippet, and then go on to the next. What's the, you know, nobody is pulling that together and creating that kind of a summary. And, you know, I don't know if MMN really has all of the resources to do that, but in terms of, you know, a town body that would understand the context and be able to, I think, prioritize and maybe pull some of that together, it would be fantastic to keep the public better informed. And again, not just in TV media, but in others.
Okay, now that addresses, just a moment, Frank, that addresses some of the government aspects. Keep in mind, we under the terms of the franchise agreement, we also need to cover public programming as well as educational programming. So we have it's our own version of a three-legged stool. Okay, Frank, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, well, I had a mechanism for setting this up that you know, we could dedicate one of the 3 channels to be a 24-hour bulletin board / news station, you know, and we could hire a reporter to do this kind of thing where they would analyze meetings and pull out the, you know, the important points, and maybe they could interview like, for instance, the assistant town manager occasionally to go over the issues, and, you know, because that's what the mechanism, you know. And then what you could do is combine, you know, if you have 3 channels, you could combine 2 of them, like education and public, into one channel, and have this news bulletin board thing and hire reporters. But of course, now that the town owns the station or controls the station, you know, you might have a little bit of objectivity problem there, but you know, you can still, I don't know, maybe have a separate committee that runs the news station. I don't know. That's my mechanism. I think they do something like that in Wayland, by the way. They have a special station that runs 24/7 with bulletin board and other information. That's my.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Let's take some other audience questions. I see David Allen has raised his hand. David, go ahead.
There's no question that we've got a real problem with local news as across the entire society. There is right now, has been going on for at least 2 or 3 years, an effort to create another newspaper in town, just as an example. And we can't ignore Frank pointing out that there's potential great difficulty in the news source being controlled by the government. But let's leave that to the side for the moment and look to the interesting propositions that come out of the Lexington 50 pages or whatever, not that I've looked at it, but I can imagine. On the one side, there have been dramatic changes in the technology and in the use, the cultural patterns that emerge, the use of that. On the other side of it, our starting point really is the realities. Lexington ain't Concord. Concord has its own fiber to the home infrastructure, its own delivery mechanism. That makes it just completely different from the situation in Lexington. And more than that, there is a committee that is not only charged with all that is involved with delivering that broadband service, but they operate in intimate relationship with the town department, the light plant who does this. It clearly is not going to work to have dueling committees struggling over who's got responsibility for this issue. I think the interesting question is, how do you structure something following along Matt's thoughts there and introduced by Vince in the first place, bringing up the Lexington report. How do you structure something almost certainly building from a light plant board who now have long, and I have to say again, I am the guilty party for the town having broadband. Ruth and I know that intimately, going back those 20 years when Ruth was a select person. Long tail. We need sound thinking about how to grow from where we are with the light plant board that already has this responsibility. And the news question is in many ways a separate question, crucial, but in many ways a separate one.
Thank you, David. I'm doing a time check. It's 10:30. We have half an hour left. I'd like to take 2 more questions from the audience, then move on to the next topic on the agenda. We're going to go with Nancy Pierce first and then Brooks Reed. Nancy, go ahead. You have your hand up. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm just going to be very brief because, after all, I'm from Carlisle and not Concord, but I've been associated with a mosquito for, I don't know, 35 years or something like that, as a reporter, as an editor, board member, etc. And I just want to say that it's absolutely deadly, the thought that a news operation would be in any way controlled by town government. I know that this committee, at least in its original concept, I had the impression that it was to kind of try to get around the fact that town government was going to own a TV station. So then pushing into the news and all the analysis and selection and bias, if you want to call it, evaluation of what's going on, it really has to be independent. This has nothing to do with what you're doing now, but I have never understood why Concord doesn't have a mosquito operation. It requires a lot of work, but it's not rocket science. It's a nonprofit and people either work for free or for almost nothing. And the whole deliver it to everybody in town means that it always has a presence, as opposed to a TV station, which unless somebody turns it on and happens upon channel 8 or whatever, doesn't really have the same ubiquity and attention that it gets from the people in town. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank
It's
you,
none of my
Nancy.
business, really. I just wanted to offer that perspective.
No, Nancy, I always appreciate your opinions. Ruth, do you have Nancy's address for the record?
That's what I was going to ask. Thank
Okay.
you.
1152 Westford Street in Carlisle.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Great.
Sure.
Brooks,
And I
go
should
ahead.
say that even though I'm not actually actively writing, I'm still sort of attending as a reporter who's just kind of covering this in case I ever write another thing about it.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, Brooks, why don't you go ahead and give your name and address, please, for the record. And you're still on mute, Brooks. Hold on. Let's see. You'll have to unmute yourself because we still can't hear you.
Oh,
Nope, still no go.
I saw this problem in another Zoom meeting. It's a selection of your microphone, Brooks. Look at your microphone selection in the audio.
Okay, do you have it now, Brooks? Okay,
so
we have a short interlude. What we're going to do after Brooks is done with his comment, we're going to switch over to just a preliminary discussion on the budget. I want to show you what's happened in the past. We don't have budget figures right now, but at least we remember what we did last year. So Brooks, whenever you're ready. Nope,
No.
still can't do it.
Carlin, can I take
Okay.
10?
All right. Brooks, if you can get it back, give me a shout. Okay, we'll put you on. Go ahead, Terry.
Oh, I just want to take 10 seconds to say this was a really exciting conversation. And I know that you came to the select board at one point and didn't get anywhere, but try again. Try to come in with a proposal because I think it's a really important idea.
Good. Thank you.
And
Appreciate
just
that.
10 more seconds from me just to say
Absolutely.
that I wasn't implying that it was strictly a government thing. I think that local coverage is required generally, and not just government.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right.
Carla?
Go ahead, Vince, go ahead, fire away.
Oh, I just wanted to respond similarly to Matt. I definitely wasn't implying that the Carlisle mosquito was a government operation. In fact, it's a virtue that it's not. And amazingly, actually, Lexington has a locally owned and operated publication. It's not a weekly, it's a monthly, but it's quite substantial. And in that case, it's a private couple that was in the media and print media business there for a while. And they've been running this thing for, I think, 15 years.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's turn over to Brooks. I think we'll give him another try. Go ahead, Brooks.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yay! Name and address, please.
Brooks Reed, 366 Estabrook Road. I want to echo the comments of the other people who've spoken against making the town-operated TV station a news source. It certainly does consolidate power for the town to be able to shape the narrative about what's going on. And I completely agree that that's the wrong approach to a town-controlled TV station. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brooke. That was worth
Thank
it.
you.
Appreciate that. All right, we're going to switch topics now. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, the PEG Access Enterprise Fund. And yes, we will revisit this charge concept next time. That'll be part of the April agenda as well, so we can continue the discussion. If you have some suggested edits to the current draft charge, send them over to me. If you need some help making the edits, just let me know, and I'll send you the draft version in Word form that I can access at least. It is posted on our webpage, the current version, so feel free to hack it and slash, and we'll bring it up for discussion at the April meeting. All right, the PEG budget. I'm going to share a couple of things on the screen here for you. Just a second. We don't have the enterprise budget yet. We haven't received that. Let me see. Is Phil, if you can hear me by any chance? You don't have your video turned on, but if you do know any status on when we're going to be able to see the PEG enterprise budget, no status. Okay.
I don't.
Okay, well, hopefully it'll be soon because we'd like to take a look at it. The one thing that I will note is that the previous enterprise, and I'm going to put up that screen, it did not allocate any capital funding, which I find kind of peculiar. All right, so what I'm going to put up is on the, yeah, let's do this one here. Okay, this is the PEG budget revenues, expenses, balance. Is a sheet that I have prepared. Yeah, we've done this once before, and let's see. I'm going to do a share screen of this critter. There we go.
Is it coming from the town manager's proposed enterprise budget?
This is a document, yes, that I created with data from the enterprise budgets for the last 3 years. And I put this information all together on one document. The first part of it shows the revenues budgeted, then the expenses budgeted, and then the fiscal year with the PEG balance. Going through it, I actually have some data from fiscal year 2017 all the way through the current fiscal year 2021. It shows some information about what the revenues were, the expenses were. The bottom line is for the last couple of years, revenues have exceeded expenses, and therefore the PEG fund balance has been growing, so that it was expected at the end of 2021 fiscal year to be $1.4 million roughly. I do have a short graphic here that shows the revenues versus expenses. And then I also have down in the bottom of the document a bar chart showing the growth of the fund and a listing of the YouTube subscribership. Now this was data as of December 2020, started in October 18th at 0. I think the current subscribership for the YouTube is like 627. So this triangle would be even higher than that. It's peaked over the 600 mark of subscribers to Minuteman Media's YouTube channel. That's a look from what was done in the previous times. The other piece of information that I want to give you, and I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to pull up another document here.
Before you do, I'm very sorry.
No, go ahead.
From that document, could you tell me what a PILOF is? PILOF?
Oh, that's
Which is-
easy. That's called payment in lieu of franchise.
Of franchise.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
That is something that's brand new. It just occurred in the last fiscal year. It's a transfer from the light plant to the PEG fund as a recognition of the impact that the towns run broadband program is having on cable subscribership. I don't know if it's contained in the most recent budget that's going to be going forward, but that's what it was allocated as of last year. It is contained in the light plants reporting system as administrative expense. It's roughly $18,000. So not a significant amount, but that's the transfer going on. Okay, next document I'm going to pull up, that one goes down, is I just want to show you this. This is from the Financial Audit Advisory Committee that looks at several budgets. Let's see. Yep, this is it. Okay, good. Okay, and this one, we have a financial report that is filed with the town every year, the comprehensive annual financial report, and I've selected some pages out of this because I've highlighted the PEG access reporting. So what this means is the PEG access fund, some components of it, are reported as part of the town's annual financial audit. When the auditors come, they generally talk about the town budget or they talk about the school budget, but buried inside of the 176-page document, there are references to the PEG fund, which means PEG access is reported as part of the town's auditing process. There's a short definition in there about what PEG access fund is used for. And of course, again, I just highlighted the various pages that refer to PEG access. This one shows on the combined balance sheet as a non-major government fund, the assets, the liabilities, the fund balance. So that is being reported as part of the town's audit. I didn't know this until the most recent audit occurred. And I started going through the form that, oh yeah, some of the data actually gets into the audit process, which makes me feel better because it means that the external auditors are looking at the funds. It means our committee's job is a little bit easier because someone else is looking over the shoulder to make sure the funds are appropriately spent. Now this page shows the revenues and expenditures along with the fund balance at the end of the year, and that's part of the audit report. Okay, and then the last document I'm going to show you here is last year's PEG enterprise budget. This is the portions of it that actually show the PEG part. Let's see. Okay, that should go. Let's see if that works. All right. Now, out of this huge document, there are 25 pages that have some reference to the PEG fund or Minuteman Media Network Fund, MMN fund it's called. So in this document, it's all under the reference of MMN. And I'm not going to go through every one of the pages. I'm going to scroll down kind of quickly. That you can see it's highlighted on some of these pages. So there's another way that the dollar amounts and the purposes for MMN are reported as part of a town report.
Could we stop there at page 10, please?
Absolutely.
Exactly what you have highlighted in yellow. Could we speak to that? Is somebody, who's responsible? Where can we get a copy? How often does that happen? What?
Oh, you mean of this report?
No, of what's highlighted on page 10. Minuteman Media Network provides an analysis.
Yeah. This is done by the town. This is done by the town manager's office. Our committee does not have an input on this particular description, except to say, "Oh yeah, I noticed on the bulletin. Here's what you're saying that what Minuteman Media Network does."
I got that. Now I want
manager.
to know if somebody is doing it. Where is it?
The document itself is part of the report. It's available online. Maybe I'm not understanding your question exactly. Ruth, go ahead. Is there some other applicant?
Here we sit as a committee, and we are separate from Minuteman Media Network. We're not allowed to meddle in certain things. Somebody along the line is providing an analysis and of this fund managed by the town manager's office. So I'd like to see it.
You'd like to see, you'd like to know who's doing it? Who's doing the analysis?
And where is that analysis? It would be very helpful for this
I agree.
committee if we knew.
I agree. I don't know who is doing that analysis. I don't think it's anyone on this committee. Perhaps we can,
Carlin,
yes, go ahead, Terry.
I think that Kerry LaFleur could answer that question. I think it's done in the finance office, either by them or by the auditors or both.
Well, I'm sure that Carrie's office, the finance department, does do analysis because I've requested financial data from them in the past.
Right.
Yeah, but no, we have not seen that analysis. You're right about that, Ruth. Let me scroll down through briefly a couple of these other pages here. And the important part to me is down, I'm going to scroll kind of fast. Sorry about that. Is starting right about here. So if you go to the town report, look at page 145. This is the information that talks about PEG access. This part talks about a survey that was done 2 years ago, some of the goals. And again, this is prepared by the town manager's office and by the finance department. We do not have input on this particular presentation format. Okay, so this is where you'll find information about Minuteman Media Network, about the PEG fund, and this is the information that will be transferred forward to next year's with next year's data, fiscal year 2022 proposed, for example. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's where it is. That's what it looks like. And I'm just going to scroll down here to the bottom part so you know what page on this talks about the franchise agreement. That here's the chart about the revenues, information about the expenditures. Okay. And I think that's probably about it. Number of FTEs, payments to the general fund. All right, I'm going to stop that here. So you have the documents now. You have information about it. When we do see the budget, actually, we'll be able to make a comparison then versus now. And that was all that I wanted to present as far as this budget. Do any of the committee members have questions or observations? Ruth, go ahead.
I'm sorry to do this to you, but in my political life, I'm known as a nitpicker. So here we go. On page 146, we talk about PEG services are operated by the Minuteman Media Network and overseen by the Public Information Division.
Should I pull that up?
No, I'm just going on.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, fine.
So I want to know, what is this Public Information Division? What's it made of? It's like it's larger than a department. It has different components. Who else is in public information? Mm-hmm. And then if I go down a paragraph, and I grant you that maybe all of my nitpickers aren't able to be answered right now. If we go down under accomplishments, which is the following paragraph, it tells us that Minuteman Media Network is fully staffed with 4 full-time staff and several part-time. But I thought we were on 3 full-time and we're not able to hire our 4th.
Okay. All right. There's some adjustments need to be made in the next version. Yes.
Okay.
Continue with your list.
I'm looking at page 147 under goals.
Okay.
FY21 goals. Whose goals are those? And how do they fit with our committee goals? So one goal is to create a more robust education program through the education coordinator, who doesn't exist yet. And we are joyfully anticipating the arrival of same. So if Minuteman Media Network is actively busy doing this stuff, I would think some of it would be shared with us, the committee, but it's not in a formal way. And I would like to know more in a timely manner.
Your comments are well said. Phil, I'm hoping that when this video is posted that you'll share it and perhaps discuss it with Aaron and Kate as far as possible changes to or modifications to the upcoming enterprise budget report. I'm happy to have a discussion with it because I think Ruth has hit on a couple of things that should be noted and addressed if possible in the next version of this report. So let me know if you want some assistance with that, but I think it's worthwhile having that discussion going forward. Okay, it is 10:49. Any other questions about the observations about the budget? Again, this is just a preliminary overview. We're really preparing for when we see the actual forms, information, perhaps next meeting. All right, seeing none, what I'd like to do is move on to the really the last thing, which is any other liaison comments, and then if none, then any other public comments. So Matt, if you have any other liaison comments, feel free to say that, or Carol from Council on Aging. Any other
I don't have
comments?
any.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, Carol, do you have anything for us?
No, I don't have any. We discussed things before the meeting, which fine.
Well, I hope you can get the scheduling problem solved, and let me know if you need some assistance from the committee on that particular issue. Good. Okay. All right. Last. Okay, let's move on to public comments. Any other last-minute public comments on anything related to the committee? Brooks, go ahead.
Brooks Reed, 366 Estabrook Road. I just want to thank Ruth Lauer for paying very close attention to the details. I think that's really critical, and I'm extremely pleased to see that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Brooks. Anybody else? All right. Seeing as we have nothing else, we've accomplished another episode of PEG Access Advisory Committee, a meeting. Thank you all very much. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Vince. We'll do a roll call vote of the 3 people who are here. Myself, yes. Ruth?
Yes.
Vince?
Yes.
And I know that we don't have a quorum for a vote to finish, but I think we're pretty much done anyway. So thank you all very much for tuning in and for joining us at this committee meeting. And Lois, thank you very much as well. All right. Okay. See you later. All goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.